Just as the media were declaring that nobody wanted the job of White House Chief of Staff, President Trump yesterday gave the job on an acting basis to his budget director, Mick Mulvaney, this after plenty of press speculation and mistakes. Joining us now to analyze the coverage, Jim Geraghty, senior political correspondent for National Review, and Adrian Elrod, a Democratic strategist and former Hillary Clinton campaign aide. Jim, last Sunday morning as we sat here, the press said Nick Ayers was a done deal for Chief of Staff. He didn't take it. And reporters said Chris Christie was the leading candidate. An hour later, he dropped out. Now it's Mulvaney. Here's what the Washington Post said. Trump grew deeply frustrated at the rejections and the media narrative that no one of high stature wanted to be his chief of staff, according to a senior White House official. Fair, unfair, crazy?
Look, when you do have a couple of names that keep getting floated, it's very clear this president likes to have an almost apprentice-like setup, right? He likes to create this drama, the sense of who's going to be the next White House chief of staff, and to kind of get everybody leaning forward and excited to see who the next person's going to be.
I was very excited.
I mean, some of them are going to be more dramatic than others. Yeah. But there's been a lot of churn in this administration, and almost like you get this crazy idea that maybe this president's a little tough to work for, a little erratic, a little unsurprising you.
Well, tough to work for does seem fair. And by the way, it took the press about 9 seconds to dig up the fact that Mick Mulvaney in 2016 had called Donald Trump a terrible human being. But Adrian, HuffPost reported that Jared Kushner was under consideration for chief of staff. Reuters said other people were pushing him. The Washington Post said he wasn't under consideration at all. I was getting whiplash.
Look, I think in this case the coverage is fair because there's no question that President Trump was having a difficult time trying to find a chief of staff. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that oftentimes, or we've seen with not just chiefs of staff, but with other high-level members of the Trump administration, they come in with these stellar reputations. John Kelly, for example, four-star general, led the Southern Command for the United States of America. And then they come out of the administration and their reputations are in shambles or they're made fun of. And so I can understand why somebody, especially in the case of Nick Ayers, who has made it very clear he wants to have a future political career in his native state, would have some trepidations about becoming the chief of staff.
Right. On that point, I mean, that may be true in some cases. Ryan Zinke, the Interior Secretary, was forced out yesterday under a number of ethical allegations that he calls false. So let me go now to the Chuck and Nancy and Donald show, that extraordinary televised confrontation in the Oval Office about border funding for the wall. And, well, let's look at what the president said.
20 times you have called for, I will shut down the government if I don't get my wool. None of us have said.
You want to know something?
You've said it.
Okay, you want to put that on my...
You've said it.
I'll take it.
Okay, good.
You know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
Fair enough.
Trump is in cloud cuckoo land about his own abilities as a television performer in these settings because he got outplayed completely by Pelosi and Schumer.
He was cutting them off. He was holding up pieces of paper. Nancy, Nancy, Nancy. Chuck's sitting there like a weakling. Nancy's getting interrupted the whole time.
This is what I mean.
It was an extraordinary physical performance.
Yeah. There's a deep divide here, but purely in television terms, those 17 minutes, the consensus in me was sort of that the two Democrats had the president on the defensive.
Yeah, you could probably argue by saying, look, Trump put out his red line, right? His idea of this is what I'm willing to fight for. This is what is so important to me. I'm willing to shut down the government over it, almost like a dare to the other side. You could argue that was one of his stronger moments. I also want to point out, though, like, Howard, it feels like this was like a year ago because it was one of the better moments for the president this week, kind of overtaken by the Michael Cohen interview, kind of overtaken by the chief of staff drama. Zinke, I mean, like, even when you have a good moment, I don't feel like this was in the news.
This happens every week. I come on and I say, by the way, this happened Tuesday, and everyone looks at me like it wasn't that last year, you know. But look, Donald Trump proudly said he would shut down the government to get the $5 billion in funding he wants for that border wall. The Democrats are offering about $1 billion. And even straight news stories pointed out, usually you try to pin the shutdown on the other guys.
Yeah, right. I mean, usually you don't want to be the one who declares outwardly in front of millions of people watching national television, I'm the one who will shut down the government for this.
And I won't blame you, he said.
And I won't blame you, exactly. But what I think we have to look at the broader picture here, Howie, and I think that is that this has become a reality show. There's a lot at stake here. This is a very important, there's a lot of policy at stake, a lot of important policies that have now become sort of, resorted to this reality television show.
What about the idea that it is
Trump.
valuable and refreshing to see political leaders debating substance while the cameras are rolling?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I would really call that a big substantive debate there. I mean, I think it was more like, I want $5 billion, you want $1 billion, give and take. But Yeah, I guess perhaps it does expose the government a little bit more to the, it sort of like makes it a little bit more easy to understand.
Yeah, you could score Trump as having a win when Pelosi said, well, maybe when the cameras aren't here, we'll be able to make more progress. This suggestion of quick, let's get behind closed doors again, that's where I'm comfortable.
Well, because it's hard to do a deal in front of the
But having
camera.
said that, I mean, look, there was a time, we saw this on gun control, we saw this on the first budget fight. Trump loves these Oval Office, I'm going to argue in front of the cameras.
Yeah.
And there was a time that probably would have thrown off the Nancy Pelosi's and Chuck Schumer. We're now more than 2 years into this presidency.
Right.
This isn't all that new and surprising. This is more of the same.
Yeah,
they were ready.
And on that point, and the Democrats came out on the driveway, and then Democrats leaked to reporters that privately Nancy Pelosi had told her fellow Democrats, well, this is a manhood issue for Trump, and kind of mocking his manhood. That's a Trumpian tactic, underscoring your point. But look, leaving aside this moment that probably will fade into history, the president's happy because he broadcast to his base that he really cares about illegal immigration, as they do, that he will fight for this wall. He's willing to shut down because that's what the threat was all about. So from his point of view, it might have been a win.
Yeah, from his point of view, I think it is a win because if you're Trump, all you're trying to do is placate to your base. You're trying to show your base that you're there fighting for him. The problem here is that this is not expanding his base. It is literally just generating more excitement among his base, but he's not actually expanding it, which is what hurt him in the midterms and which is going to hurt him in 2020 unless he finds a way to actually bring in independents and swing voters.
Right. And by the way, this was all about the television moment because, and we've got this on videotape, there's not going to be a shutdown. Nobody wants a shutdown. Both parties, they all want to leave this town and go home for Christmas. I could be wrong, but I think in the end they always sort of find some kind of compromise. And so that a lot of this can be kind of playing to the respective bases.